Mr. Evelyn? Here. Mr. Tiller?
Here.
Ms. Page? Here. Mr. Steers?
Here.
And Mr. Lockwood?
Here.
Good morning, everybody. Thank you for all being here. First item on the agenda is discussion and consideration of consolidating county and school employee health insurance benefits. Mr. Matt Davis with McGriff Insurance Services. Right there is fine. Thank you.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, board members, Mr. Hathaway. I'm Matt Davis with McGriff Insurance Services, and we wanted to talk to you this morning about an overview of the consolidation of the county and school board's health benefit program. I can pause until we get it going, or okay. So they each have paper copies. All right, I'll go ahead and proceed in the interest of time. If you go to page 2, what we're tasked with looking at as part of the discussion is identifying a mission and objectives for the consolidations, look at the risk and the challenges, as well as the advantage of potentially consolidating, and determine if there was a path to move forward. And you know, really where we looked at is how would it impact the county, how it would impact the school board, but also how it would impact the employees, more importantly. And then look at financial risks, projections of combining, look at the potential savings, which we'll get into in a minute, and then how we get there, if that's the recommendation. Next page. So the purpose of doing this is to maintain a competitive benefit level to where the county and the schools can continue to attract and retain employees, particularly being competitive with larger municipalities and school boards. Also create an approach that is beneficial not just to the county but also to the school board and vice versa. So there can't be a winner and a loser. The other piece is economies of scale. Why do it? Is there going to be savings there? And we've identified a couple areas where there definitely would be savings, but also giving more transparency into what some costs are. For example, the county cannot see their claims utilization on the prescription drugs, and we want to be able to do that. And then one of the objectives is there's a big cost differential between the county and the schools. There's also a benefit differential. And over time, moving those closer together, but not doing it right away because that would create disruption for the employees. So we would bridge the benefits and then set objectives and financial goals for doing this. So on page 4, we looked at the advantages, market leverage. This would create a group that is over 500 employees covered. And that is a kind of a tipping point to the next level and gets a lot more attention from the carriers. Economies of scale, where we would see, by going over 500, lower administrative costs, as well as lower stop loss costs potentially, as well as being able to actually take on more risk, which would reduce some of the fixed costs. And then uniform benefits across all county employees, school board and county. It would really, one of the big pluses is it would simplify the budget process. It's all coming out of one pot at the end of the day, and being able to work collaboratively to create the budget rather than submitting a budget and on the school side and then having to negotiate. It's really one item and moving together, working on that as a team. The big advantage is we started talking about this back in April, late March, and we have plenty of time. It would not be for this year, obviously. It would be for, at the earliest, 7/1/24. A couple of things that we need to from a challenge perspective, that we need to keep an eye on is change management and how the claims would stack up from both entities. If one of the entities goes in the wrong direction, that could create a delay. It's not something we want to do it just because we're going to do it. It has to make financial sense, and it has to make sense from a human perspective. So we would start the process this year. I'll get into that in a second. And then we would really create a coordination of bringing the benefits together over time, but it would not be something that would happen overnight. It would be over a matter of 2 or 3 years. So on the next pages, we get into some of the numbers, and what you want to focus on for the conversational is the bottom row, which is total PEPM, which is per employee per month costs. So you have the county's current cost, $1,018. At the renewal for 7/1/23 would be $1,089, and we just used 7% as an average trend and trended that out. So at the end of year 3, it would be $1,247. The schools is on the next page, and these are actual costs and then trended forward. The renewal is going from $1,391 to $1,613. That's an actual renewal, 15%, and then we think we can achieve 7% over the next 3 years on a trend basis with the school standing by itself. Consolidation is illustrated on page 7, and where we show a lower than average trend, meaning that we'll have more transparency into cost, a better ability to control cost, and then in year 2, we're actually increasing some of the exposure on a self-funded environment, called it aggregating specific. It's just taking a little more risk, but it greatly reduces the cost and bends that trend downward. So after consolidation, in terms of one risk pool, even if we have different costs charged back to the entities and a little bit different benefits, we feel like we can achieve some cost savings over time. And keep in mind, these are cumulative or compounding costs. So anytime we save 1% in 1 year, that perpetuates that savings over time. So it's not just a one-time savings. So the next steps on page 8 is we wanted to make you aware of the intention to merge with the schools for July 1st, 2024, or FY25. The projected cost and process for the school board would be next steps to reduce it or to change their plan year from October 1 to July 1, and we would do that this year if the school board approved it. And then have us monitor claims experience for both entities on a monthly basis to make sure the plans are moving in the right direction and that combining is still the right answer. Go to market in the last quarter of this year for July 1st of 24, FY25. And that would give us enough time to not only handle communication, choose the right vendor, but also manage the change through communication with the employees. And then we would present our recommendations for funding, design, and employee cost in January of 24, along with a 3-year strategy to migrate the costs and the benefits. And we'd also initiate communications to the employees in February, because as we talked about from the outset, change management is a big deal, particularly for the employees. This touches every employee from both entities. And then so I think the big recommendation is that we would go ahead and proceed with this process, report back after our market findings for our final approval from the county as well as the school board. So before action is taken and actually conversion of the two. So that is really all the presentation we had for you today. I just wanted to keep you up to speed of what we were proceeding with. Any questions for me? Any questions I can help with?
Mrs. Steers, you have any questions?
Is the McGriff is a subsidiary of Truist Bank?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And one other question is, I've never heard of McGriff. I'm sorry. I bet they're one of the best companies in the world, but I have never heard of them. But if we're going to open it up to you, then why shouldn't we open it up to several different companies? Because maybe we could even get a better package from someone else.
I would think I've worked with the schools for 15 years or so.
Right.
It's really just knowledge of what their plan design is, and
Okay.
also working with Local Choice over the years.
Okay.
So,
All right. Thank you, sir.
yes, sir. And we used to be known as BB&T Insurance, and nobody's ever heard of McGruff. Usually we get McGruff, but anyway. Thank you.
Mr. Applin?
Would this hurt who's at more risk, the county side or the school side? I mean, is it helping one more than the other? Or, I know, like you said, at the end of the day, it comes from one pool. But how's it going to affect county employees versus school employees? Is one going to be more affected than the other?
We're going to make sure that it doesn't adversely affect either entity. And it's about really two things, is the cost structure, both county and schools and at the employee level, but also to make sure that we're not taking anything away from the employees from either side as well. So it's not going to affect either one adversely. And it's a long-range decision, obviously. It's not something that you would do this just for 1 year. It would be for perpetuity.
Well, we're just moving forward. We're not saying we're going forward with this yet. We're just doing still in the preliminary process. Right?
Just exploration.
Yeah, thank you.
Mr. Lockwood?
So if nobody's going to be hurt in this process, then would you say that they have comparable coverage on both plans?
Yes and no. There are some pretty major differences in terms of one offers an HSA, a health savings account, one does not. But I think combining the two between multiple choices or benefit options is going to be the way to get there. So you, in a sense, not taking benefits away, but just having more options available. If that makes sense.
Because it looks like, currently county employees are paying $1,018 and school employees are paying $1,391. So they're paying almost $400 more for the same coverage. And if we look at the combined current would be $1,377, so there's about a $20 difference for the school employees, but about a $350 increase for the county employees, current versus current.
Right.
And when you project out all of these, at year 3, county employees are projected to be paying $1,247, which is still lower than current school employees paying currently. So if you look at the 3-year projection, we're looking at county employees on the combined plan would be paying $230 more than projected on their own plan, and school employees paying almost $600 more. I don't see where it benefits anybody. I mean, the cost difference, I'm only looking at it from the standpoint of the employee. It's like every step of the way, combining them increases everybody's cost, except in year 1.
Right. Well, if you, and I probably should have done a better job of explaining this, but when you look at where the county is versus where the school is, add them together, and I didn't show you that sheet, it is higher than if it's higher separately than it is together, is the answer. To glean that from these sheets is probably a little bit of a stretch, but I think the big thing is this doesn't take into account any reaction from the market at all as a combined group, because you go from two medium-sized groups to a larger group, and it gives you more negotiating power in the market.
If that's the case, then I would think, and please, I don't mean to offend, but
No.
it would almost seem to me like we'd be better moving the schools to the county plan if coverage is, for all practical sense, equal, but projected to be significantly less, like to the tune of a couple $100 a month, county plan versus the school plan combined. It would benefit the schools and the county. I'm just looking at your numbers. That's the indication I get, that the cost per employee is, even combined, $230 less at year 3 than, I mean, the school is going to benefit significantly by their projections. It reduces if they were on our plan at year 3, it would save them $750 a month per employee.
Right. And we're not looking at this analysis as the end-all result. We're just looking at it, can we bridge the gap to make sure that one would not be hurt over the other? And the answer is yes. As part of the marketing process, we would look at local choice for the combined entity as well. So that would be looking at the counties as well. Part of the issue is, there's two issues with local choice. We already mentioned that you do not get transparency into drug costs, which is a big part of spend. It's the most increasing cost of medical care today. The second thing is that there is upon leaving, one of the risks is upon leaving local choice, the county has to make a decision by the end of March in order to leave, and then there's a fee that they have to pay, or potential fee, should they leave. And that, you don't have any transparency in that at all. And you don't know what that number is prior to making the decision to leave. So that's obviously part of the risk that we have in the county leaving, but also if the combined entity went into local choice and wanted to leave at a later date. But to answer your question, yes, we would look at local choice in a combined fashion as well as one of the options. And you would have that those numbers before ever making a decision to commit one way or the other.
I think we should have those numbers sooner rather than later so we can do a side-by-side comparison.
We would formally have to go to market to do that. And that would be part of what we intend to do later this year.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great questions.
Ms. Page? I'm inclined to agree with Mr. Lockwood. If the numbers now, and the county side is paying significantly less than the schools, what's the biggest difference in coverages right now between the two to be that much gap in between the cost?
It's more of claims than anything and being able to see the claims. But part of what we would do is over that 3-year period is have the cost allocated. So if you have a combined cost of $1,500, let's say, and the county's claims experience justified it to be lower, then the cost allocated to the county would be a lower number and the schools would be a higher number. So in a sense, the average is the total, but we would have the flexibility to allocate costs based upon claims experience, and then within a certain range. So the county would get, let's say the county performed better than the schools, they would get the associated cost that corresponds to their claims experience within parameters. The employees, therefore, which is what dictates the employees' cost, is whatever the county pays in total. Their rates wouldn't be affected adversely either. So it's the best of both worlds. It's being able to have the transparency and the leverage to the marketplace, but it's also being able to have the flexibility to allocate costs appropriately. And if it doesn't save money, then we won't do it.
All right, so you're saying if they combined, they would still look at the schools for their claims as opposed to the county's claims instead of as one large group, the total number of claims, and not still separated?
Well, we would, being the joint committee between the county and the schools, would look at things together and separate and be able to allocate costs based upon performance, bringing them closer together over time. But the idea is that you'll get better, you'll perform better together and have access to programs that you didn't have access to before, and cost changes that you didn't have access to before. By the same token, you don't have to have the exact same cost, exact same benefit across the both organizations. We would recommend that the benefits be the same, but the cost may be slightly different, especially on the onset, because there are differences in costs and benefits.
Okay. I still agree with Mr. Lockwood, and I think we need to have some, like you said, a comparison to look at. Personally, I think we can sit and talk like this all day long and still not come up with an agreement, I guess you could say. So I look forward to seeing that. So, thank you.
Thank you.
Next agenda item is the Bay Transit Service Update. Transit Director Ken Pollock. Good morning.
Good morning. It's working. Lucky. I was a little wondering about that. My name's Ken Pollock. I'm the Transit Director for Bay Transit. We provide public transportation for New Kent and Charles City County out here. Ms. Inman and I have spoken several times, and she's asked me to come give you an update on how service is going. It's been a while since I've been here. And also to share with you our experience with a microtransit project that we are currently underway with in Gloucester County. So I assume this will make it happen. Right click. There we go. Bay Transit is a division of Bay Aging. We're the area agency on aging for the Middle Peninsula and Northern Neck of Virginia. We provide, I'm sorry. I was kind of leaning back so I could follow the slides. Is that better? We provide what's called demand response public transportation throughout the 12 counties that we serve. You can see it's a very large area, 3,000 square miles. It's larger than the state of Delaware. And so we're providing transportation services throughout that area. Our service is unique in that it is based on a paratransit model, but it is open to the general public. It is we call it curb to curb or door to door service. People have to call in advance. They schedule their ride at least 24 hours in advance. Then we set up a pickup time with them. We call them back and we come and pick them up and take them to their destination. Typically, we schedule a return trip at that time as well to get them home. Excuse me. One of the challenges that we face is that we're doing 120-some thousand rides a year, and they average 10 miles per trip for every single trip that we provide. Because of the rural nature of our service area, we're traveling a long ways to get people to their destinations. One of the things that we want to stress, and that oftentimes the public has a misconception about, is that our service is not just for seniors. It is not just for people with disabilities. It is for all people and for all reasons. So anybody can use Bay Transit if they just call us in advance to set up a ride. If your car breaks down, it's going to be in the shop for a week. If you break your leg and you can't drive for a couple of months, we can take care of you. So we want to get the word out on that. One of the things that's surprising, yeah, we did 123,000, almost 124,000 rides last year. Typically, pre-COVID, we were around 140 or 150,000, so we're not quite back up to that level. But over 50% of our trips are work-related. We're taking people, mostly people without transportation options, taking them to work and back. Often people are in their first job they've ever had out of school, or they're trying to get back on their feet. They've lost their license for whatever reason, and these are the folks that are the majority of our riders, or work riders. And they're not people that have a car and are commuters. It's not a ride of convenience. It's a ride of necessity for people to use us. Oftentimes they save up their money and they buy a car, and then we don't see them anymore. But that's a success story for us if we help them get back up on their feet. A little bit about the specific service in New Kent. In 2006, New Kent and Charles City counties partnered and shared resources to pay to have 3 vehicles running throughout the 2 counties together. So New Kent and Charles City share 3 vehicles that operate from 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. Monday through Friday, doing this door-to-door service. Excuse me, that I was talking about. Ridership before COVID in New Kent, this is just the New Kent numbers alone, was about 5,000 at its peak. And then you saw some significant drops during COVID. We saw that across our service area. Every transit system in the world pretty much lost ridership because public transit was feared to be a super spreader for riding in a bus in close quarters. We're starting to make a comeback, but I've spoken with Miss Inman several times, and we want to do some marketing and some PR to get the word back out to folks in New Kent about the service that's available. I participate in the New Kent University program every year, and I'm surprised that how few of the participants are familiar with what we do, or they believe it's just for seniors or just for people with disabilities. So we want to get the word out in New Kent County so we can try to bolster that ridership to get it back to pre-COVID levels. Now, this is our microtransit project I was going to share a little bit about. It's called Bay Transit Express, and it's in the Gloucester County area, if you're familiar with Gloucester. I know you're probably somewhat familiar with microtransit, but just to give you the basics are that it's an Uber-like service that uses a smartphone app for people to download, and then they can schedule a ride through the app, and typically we're there in less than 10 minutes. So the difference is you don't have to call 24 or 48 hours in advance and settle for a pickup time based on what we have available. This gets you door to door within the service zone. That's the criteria is you have to be in the service zone and your destination has to be in the service zone. This is our original zone was around the courthouse area down to Walmart and the shopping area, in that, if you're familiar with the Gloucester courthouse area, the hospital and the shopping. We had one bus. We started with a spare bus that we had to start the service. We had via the software company developed the app for us and branded it specifically for us, and we started the service in July of 2020 to let me see if I've got some information on that. Yeah, this is the flow of how you download the app, you schedule the ride, the driver gets the notification on his tablet, then he goes and picks you up. Whenever possible, we're aggregating the ride, so it's not a taxi service. We're trying to get more people on the vehicle if the schedules permit. We also know that a lot of people don't have smartphones, so we also have a call center where people can call in and schedule their rides through this service as well. We launched at the end of June in 2021. For the first year, we had almost 4,000 rides. Our average trip duration, 7.5 minutes. We were getting 4.9 star rating from the app ratings, similar to Uber, that you can rate your ride. We then were able to acquire a newer, more economical vehicle that scoots around the area much more efficiently, put that into service. Excuse me. Some of the challenges, as I mentioned, a lot of folks that don't have smartphones or aren't savvy enough to download the app and utilize it properly on their phones. Typically, we would do face-to-face interactions. Because of COVID, we could not do that. We couldn't have a group together and download the app form and show them how to use it. So we had to do our marketing through more traditional means of putting out flyers, radio and newspaper ads. But we did have a lot of challenges getting people to download the app and utilize it properly. One of the things that really surprised us was the efficiency. At the same time that we had when we started up the Microtransit Express, we did have a fixed route that ran in the similar area. The cost per hour, and those numbers on the left are comparable to what our costs per hour are for the vehicles that operate like in New Kent and Charles City counties. So the operating costs were dramatically different for us. So that prompted us to see, what if we expanded this in Gloucester County and cut out the fixed route altogether? So that was our next project, and we got some funding from the Department of Rail and Public Transportation. And in October, we did expand to 3 buses, and we expanded the service zone all the way down 17 to the New York River Bridge, if you're familiar with Gloucester Point and that area. And we've been so happy with it. We are looking at, in the next 2 or 3 years, expanding into Tappahannock, West Point, maybe Kilmarnock, anywhere where we're looking to see how effective this can be in rural communities. And that was the original purpose of the grant, was a pilot project to see how microtransit works in rural communities. And so we were fortunate enough to be selected by the Department of Rail and Public Transportation to be one of the pilot projects. So this is the initial service zone on the left and the expanded service zone on the right that goes all the way down to the point. And the key is to include trip generators in your planning, and that is origins and destinations, apartment complexes, low-income apartments, senior housing complexes, trailer parks, hospitals, counseling centers, urgent care, Walmart, retail shopping. Those are all included in the service area, and they generate origin and destination trips. And so that's a critical piece in the planning, is to look at your trip generators. Looking at our key performance indicators, we weren't sure what was going to be successful. When we had the one vehicle, we set a goal for 400 rides a month. And when we expanded to 3 vehicles, we just kind of tripled that to 1,200 rides a month. Well, that quickly exploded when we expanded. This is from the first month of expansion to up through April, and we had as many as 1,700 rides in March with the 3 vehicles. So the interest and the ridership has actually exploded for us. We're up to almost 9,000 rides. In the first year we did 3,800 rides. So, and we still have half of the year left as far as our ridership goes. So the success, it's been such a great success for us financially, ridership-wise, and with the customer service and satisfaction ratings going through the roof. The convenience of not having to call so far in advance has really made a big difference. So these are some of the applications that people might, or towns and counties might use for applying microtransit. Focusing on high-need populations, and we did that to some extent, but not exclusively. We did focus on replacing a fixed route that wasn't performing well and was expensive with the microtransit, and that's what we have done. Looking to replace older demand response services, another application. And then expanding service into limited or no existing public transit, and providing first and last mile connections to other transit services such as Virginia Railway and maybe GRTC or something like that. So that's it in a nutshell as far as my presentation goes on microtransit. We're very pleased with the outcome of this pilot project, and we are planning over the next few years how we can expand it because it's more convenient and it's also cheaper for us to operate. It just makes sense to see where we can go with that. So with that, thank you.
Thank you. Does anybody have any comments, questions? No? Thank you.
All right, thank you.
Next on the agenda, item 3, consideration of the proposed county attorney employment agreement. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. Before you, you should each have a copy of the employment agreement for the county attorney position, and this is for the hiring of Mr. Joshua Everard. Excuse me. This agreement is very similar to my agreement and the previous county attorney position, and I'll briefly go through it. The agreement agrees both parties to an annual salary of $125,000 commencing on June 16th, 2023. The agreement lays out the duty of the county attorney's position. It also lays out the what qualifies for a severance payment for a period of 6 months of salary. The agreement requires that the employee gives the employer 2 months written notice for a resignation unless otherwise agreed upon a shorter amount. There's also a performance evaluation required after the first 6 months of employment. The employee will follow our regular county sick leave and annual leave policies, although annual leave will accrue at a rate of 10 hours per full month. The benefits plan, the employee will have the access to the same benefits as county employees. Health insurance will be covered by the county. And the county will be responsible for providing liability insurance for the position as well as responsible for covering the cost of any professional organizations and memberships that the county attorney is involved in. That is the gist of the employment agreement. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Hathaway?
And I'd just like that. The start date in the contract is June 16th, and that's because we always start at the beginning of a pay period to bring somebody onto our payroll. But for those of you that are looking forward to Joshua being here, his actual first, which is all of us, his actual first day in the office will be June 20th. June 19th, that Monday, is a holiday for us, so therefore he'll start Tuesday, June 20th, physically in the office.
Nothing like starting a job on a holiday. Anybody else have any questions for Mr. Hathaway? If not, Mr. Evelyn?
Mr. Chairman, I move to authorize the chairman of the New Kent County Board of Supervisors to execute the proposed employment agreement to approve the hiring of Joshua Everett as the New Kent County Attorney to begin employment on June 16, 2023, with a starting salary of $125,000.
Thank you, Mr. Evelyn. Ms. Watkins, would you poll the members, please?
Mr. Evelyn,
Aye.
Ms. Page, Mr. Steers,
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood,
Aye.
and Mr. Tiller.
Aye. Welcome aboard.
And could you please pronounce your last name?
Everard.
Everard, A-R-D, Everard. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Item 4, a resolution to change the New Kent County Board of Supervisors June 23rd and July 2023 regular meeting dates, Resolution R-1523. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. We have previously discussed changing the June and July regular meeting dates. State code requires that that change be done by adoption of a resolution. So therefore, you have the resolution before you to change the June meeting date from June 12th to June 8th, and the July meeting date from July 10th to July 13th.
Thank you, Mr. Hathaway. Would anybody like to adopt that resolution with a motion?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, Mr. Lockwood.
I move to adopt Resolution R-15-23, changing New Kent Board of Supervisors June 2023 and July 2023 regular meeting scheduled dates.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. And Ms. Watkins, would you poll the members, please?
Ms. Page, Mr. Steers,
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood,
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn,
Aye.
and Mr. Tiller.
Aye. Next item, item 5, authorization for the chairman of the Board of Supervisors and/or county administrator to act on behalf of the county for the sale of public property. Mr. Hathaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. The public property in question is the property that you've previously agreed to sell to Liberty Baptist Church. We're in the process of closing on that property, the 1.929 acres adjacent to Liberty Baptist Church, and the attorney representing Liberty Baptist Church has requested the adoption of this resolution, specifically authorizing the chairman or myself to sign off on the closing documents. After the adoption of this resolution, if it is adopted, I imagine that the sale will close pretty quickly within the next 2 weeks.
Any questions for Mr. Hathaway? If not,
Mr. Chairman, I have
thank you, Mr. Lockwood.
motion. I move to adopt Resolution R-16-23 to authorize Mr. C. Thomas Tiller and/or Rodney A. Hathaway to act on behalf of the county for the sale of tax map parcel 45-74 to Liberty Baptist Church.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood. Ms. Watkins, would you poll the members, please?
Mr. Steers,
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood,
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn,
Aye.
Ms. Page, and Mr. Tiller.
Aye. Item number 6, discussion on fire EMS apparatus for the New Kent County Bottoms Ridge Fire Station. Chief Opet.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board.
Good morning.
This morning I come to you, and it's hard to believe I'm in front of you again. However, if for planning purposes, I'll kind of give you a quick summary, and I'm going to do something different than I normally do. I'm going to slow down because there's a lot of things that can be confusing here. So my northern tendencies get in the way of speaking really fast. So I'm going to slow down a little bit. As you know, pretty much since COVID, the manufacturing world has been turned upside down. You can't get parts and pieces to anything, and backlogs seem to be the biggest issue of dealing with anything large. We see it in the automobile industry. We're also now seeing it significantly in the fire and EMS world that we live in. It's been kind of a hard it's been a hard pill to swallow for me because of how long I've been in the business, and to see what's happening in the apparatus world is complete sickness, is my opinion. However, I was humbled a few weeks ago at a Chief Summit. I've been really hoping that the market was going to come back to normal. But after listening to a few folks in the world, I think that I'm going to have to jump on the bus and start planning for what the new normal is. And we talked about the new normal years ago in COVID. I think the new normal is here upon us with apparatus. And what does that mean? The new normal is pretty much planning 2 to 3 years in advance for these purchases. And that's kind of where we are today. With the planning of Station 6 and Bottoms Bridge, obviously we have to have apparatus to open or to have that station. And with that, I have kind of two options to present to you. One option is pretty much all new apparatus, including an engine and an ambulance and a tower ladder. And the reasons we say the tower ladder is with the apartments coming in Bottoms Bridge, the other potential stuff that's on the horizon there. It's just the right thing to have there in our business for any rescues that need to be made in a 3-story apartment complex with some setbacks. And a typical engine and an ambulance. That's what kind of we plan to be in that station. So with that being said, two options. First option is going to be an option with all new apparatus. The second option is a new ambulance, a new engine, and then a refurbished tower ladder. The tower ladder obviously is the most expensive piece on this piece of paper, but I want to go over two options with you. The other thing before I hand this out is not only are they having backlogs, and let me back up a little bit. The backlogs right now, when all of the COVID money came in, a lot of municipalities bought ambulances and apparatus and stuff that you could buy, if you remember, going back to those crazy days of people just trying to spend money. That created a significant backlog, not only in the fire apparatus manufacturers and EMS manufacturers, but in the chassis distribution plants too, in Chevy and Ram and Ford. So to get a chassis right now, you're looking very tough to get a chassis anywhere across the market. So that's kind of where we are with the world of that. Also, with used apparatus, and I have no problem with used apparatus, you all know that. But if you take a look at what they did in the automobile industry, the used apparatus is pretty ridiculous for what you're getting for the cost. So anyway, let me pass this out here and all right, so option 1 in blue here, you'll see the new ambulance for $417,000. If you remember in our last budget, I budgeted I think $300,000 per ambulance. That to date was not enough. So that's the number that it's going to be when this is all said and done. New engines at about $900,000 and tower ladder is at $2.5 million. So that's a total of $3.8 million. Option two is a new ambulance and a new engine, same price, and then a tower ladder. We have located a tower ladder that can be refurbished. When it's all said and done, we would purchase that for about $400,000 and then send it to Ohio to be refurbished for about a total of $900,000. With that, there's probably contingency that's needed there because when they start to refurb, you just never know what they're going to find in there. So probably about a 10% contingency plan on that. So, and that's only going to last you 10 years. So you're going to invest about $1 million for 10 years, whereas on the other side, you're going to invest $2.5 million for about 25 years of the life of the building. So when you take a look at the overall, what the county would spend is you're looking at 3.8 for new and then 5.217. And I say that because after 10 years, we're going to have to replace that tower ladder for about, at that point, a potential of $3 million for about $5.2 million. When we, after 10 years, right now we're looking at a 2008 and refurbing it. So the value would probably be pretty low. So long story short is on option one, in July 1, we're going to have another increase of 8% across the board. So when you take a look at 8% of that number, you're looking at another $250,000 after July 1. And that's what's going on right now. These increases every 6 months are absolutely ridiculous. Option 2, same thing, we'd place the order, but the other thing is we'd need some cash out of pocket now, which would be that potentially up to $900,000 to get that moving. Option 1, we don't need any cash until this is delivered in potential 2 years or 3 years. That's how long it's taking. It's going to be about 2 years for an ambulance and about 3 years for the engine and the tower. So really option 1, we would just commit to ordering these and pay for them in about 2 years, 3 years when they start coming in. I mean, you'll see the fiscal year impact there in that last column of FY25 or 6 or FY26 and 7 for the tower ladder. In option 2, same thing for the ambulance and the engine. However, the financial impact for the refurb, we would need that money moving forward here in the next few months just to get that because it is used apparatus. So those are the two options that I present for you to ponder over today. I would love to have the opportunity to go ahead and start negotiating and to pull the trigger here by July 1 to save the county some funding and to get this into the system in the manufacturers so that, 2-3 years, that's a long time. And when you're looking at the Bottoms Bridge Station, depending on how that all rolls out, that's about a year and a half build out from start. So that's where we are. I am okay with either option. Either option here works for us. I like option 1 because I get full warranties, but I also like option 2 because one of those rigs are pre-EPA standards and pre-DEF, which I think would go a long way. However, when you do refurb, there are potential what we call electrical gremlins that can pop up too. So I think either option is viable for us. We can work with either option moving forward. I just need to present it to you and see if we can move forward or not.
Did you have any apparatus now that you're going to put in the new station, ambulance?
We have the capability that because of this 2 to 3 year backlog, we can put reserve apparatus on the opening day of that station. However, it limits if something else goes down, we're going to have to do the curly shuffle pretty good to get some things back in the other stations. But if the station is open before this comes in, our plan would be to put in 2 pieces of reserve apparatus in there until the new stuff would come in.
Mr. Chairman, Chief, if we're looking at the refurb at $900,000 on the tower ladder, is that including the 10% contingency, or so we're looking at possibly $1 million on that one versus?
Yeah, to break that down for you, the asking price right now for that truck, and it's a 15-year-old truck. It's a 2008. It's $425 is the asking price right now. It's got 18,000 miles on it, so it's been some barely used truck. It's a Detroit Series 60, so the powertrain in it is worth it's. Yeah, absolutely. It'll go forever. So you're looking at about a $400,000 refurb on that truck. And really what's being refurbed is the aerial ladder. That's really what you want to focus on is the aerial ladder, making sure that all has new hydraulic hoses, all new electrical lines run to it. You don't want that to fail in a mission. So that's where that focus is.
So, excuse me. You said you have backup now that you could put into Station 6, right?
Yeah, for this backlog to wait, yeah, we can. Now, the potential of the used, the timing of that would work. The used one would work. If we would refurb that, it probably would be back in time to open that station. not an issue. But we would have reserve apparatus that we use now. The potential issue with that is again, like I said, if something else would go down during that time, we're certainly going to have to move it around, especially around Colonial Downs time when I have 2 ambulances committed to the track every day.
So I guess, let's say Station 6 opened a year from now. You had the equipment, but then you're stretched thin.
For the rest of the county.
Right.
Yeah.
So the ambulances that we have in service now, time-wise, are we still good with them through this manufacturing process for what you've got here?
Ask the question again.
All right. Do you think we would need another ambulance before this new equipment came in? That's all. If we're down to,
I think we'd be okay. I think we'd be okay with the reserve. Again, if something would go down during Colonial Downs time, that's where I think the biggest concern is because we commit 2 ambulances for 3 months every day there. That's the challenge.
Aren't the emissions, they're getting tighter this coming up year too, right? So
Yeah, Mr. Evelyn, you bring up a good point.
I'll give you my 2 cents in a minute, but I know those emissions are getting stricter and tougher.
Yeah, and I thank you for bringing that up because here's the other issue of ordering this stuff now. In December of this year, December 31st, they're going to stop taking orders for the current motors, and this is Cummins. Cummins is going to stop taking orders for the current motors that meet today's EPA standards. It's going to go into the 2027 EPA emissions, which is absolutely absurd. Basically, they're building an engine within an engine to burn off all the whatever it is. So that engine potentially is going to go up from, and they don't know yet, $70,000 an engine to about 125 to 150 is what they're doing. So they're stopping taking orders for any of the current motors in Cummins because they have to meet the new emission standard in 2027, and Cummins wants to roll that out in 2026. What does that mean for us? It also changes the manufacturers because they have to change all of the dimensions of their cabs because this motor is getting bigger and wider and is requiring more air intake to clean the air for the EPA's wonderful world that we live in. So that is, thank you for bringing that up. That is another issue of why replacing this order now is good.
You would think with all the electric cars that they're pushing, they wouldn't be so hard on an ambulance or a fire engine.
Especially when you figure you got a 15-year-old vehicle that's got 12,000 miles on it. So I would say the time in between, responding to the fire, more carbon was emitted by the fire than by the emissions of the truck.
I don't know how that truck tower ladder truck works, but when it's on site, is it idled up high or?
Oh yeah, and it idles up when it needs it.
But those emissions, if it's not getting air, and that truck is sitting there. I mean, I know because I've purchased some new trucks. If you're not running those trucks up and down the road, you're going to have emissions problems with them day in and day out. And that new tower ladder truck probably be in the shop with emissions more than it actually be.
100%, and it's all the new stuff. We're seeing sensors. We're seeing all these EPA sensors. We're going through them a dime a dozen, and they're not cheap. And I think that I don't want to get into it and belabor this, but I think most of the manufacturers who used to be family owned, most of them are now all owned by major corporations, and they're changing their business structure from building quality fire apparatus to we want to sell service, we want to sell parts. That's where we make our money, and I think that their quality is less, so that we as a municipality across the country spend more on these sensors, and that's what's happening. It's like an automobile dealership where, hey, they don't make any money on the cars, but we're going to make the money on the service and the parts, and that's what we're seeing right now, and it's a shame.
All that could change in 2 years, though.
I would sure hope for a change in this world.
Does anybody have any other discussion or questions for the chief on this? I think now is the time to act, considering the things that we will be up against in just 7 months. So, anybody have a?
Can we just, you don't need anything till like July, can we kind of take it all in and at our next meeting talk about it? Is that enough time? June 8th?
Yeah, I mean, we can certainly bring some things to the table.
I mean, unless, I'm just saying, unless everybody's okay with it, I don't.
I kind of like the used just by virtue of more reliable equipment, even though it's older.
That's what I've been doing. I've been refurbishing. I'm refurbishing '07 right now, just because of those issues.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, ma'am.
I got a question. We're talking about Station 6. What about Station 5?
Station 5's complete, and we have all the apparatus. And Station 4 in Lenexa, we have the apparatus already for that. Yes.
Okay, I'm thinking the replacement.
Yeah, the replacement is 4.
Okay, so we
We're all
don't
good
have
there.
to do. We don't have to refurbish that or update that.
No, ma'am. That is all still in good place for Station 4.
Okay.
And I rode by Station 4
And-
yesterday afternoon. I'm sorry, and it looks like they've gotten most of the exterior walls studded, and I think all the interior walls are up, aren't
Yeah,
they?
they are moving. They're moving on a pretty good pace right now.
Yeah. It's amazing.
Yes.
Seeing it on paper and then riding by and looking at it, that's gonna be nice.
If we are leaning towards option 2, it would be nice to give staff the authority to move forward now, keeping in mind that that vehicle is sitting on a lot right now for sale, and it'd be good to take advantage of that now.
Yeah.
Yeah, and just to clear it, right, if that's the way we go, we would probably need the initial, and I'm going to negotiate a little bit better, but the asking price is $425, so we need that initially, and then when the refurb hits, that's when we would need the other half of that funding. Just to be clear,
You can get it for 400, right? I'm sorry. You can get it for 400, right?
I think I can get below that.
Where, I guess, funding, Mr. Hathaway? I know the answer, but.
We do have some capital fund balance funds, some that we could put towards this.
That's funny.
Yep, we need a motion, don't
It looks like we need a motion if we're gonna.
we? All right. Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Lockwood, you're on a roll.
Yep. I move to allow fire chief and county administrator into a contract for fire EMS apparatus to be delivered in about 18 to 32 month period.
Thank you, Mr. Lockwood.
And to appropriate capital funds.
And to appropriate capital funds as needed. Sounds a little
And to
loose.
appropriate, yeah. We'll do
Capital
Colonial
funds from
Downs
Colonial
fund
Downs fund balance. Okay,
For all of it?
for the initial.
Everybody okay with that motion?
Everybody close enough?
How much is that?
Up to $425,000. Or do you want to do the?
I
You
think
wanna
I'd
do
like
the-
to hear it. I'd like to do the 425, then see what
Yeah,
you
let's
come
see what
back
come
with.
back with the refurb,
Or,
if that's cool.
or can you do
Or-
it both at the same time?
Yeah, I think my concern is,
Do we want to cap it at 9?
I would.
Okay, so
I don't think it's going to get there, but I would.
So up to 425,000 for the purchase of the vehicle and 475,000 for refurbish. Is that cool? Ready to get a 9?
Can you read that motion back just to be on the safe side?
Sorry.
Mr. Lockwood's, just turn the microphone on. Mr. Lockwood said to allow the fire chief and the county administrator sign a contract for emergency apparatus to be delivered at approximately, yeah, 18 to 32 months, and use Colonial Downs fund balance up to $425 for the purchase of the used apparatus and $475,000 for refurbishing.
I think if you put 12 to, what was the, 12 to 36, yeah, I would change the first number to 12.
And change that from 12 to 32, or yeah,
I don't want to get in trouble.
18 to 12. 12 to 32.
All righty. We all agreeing on that motion now? Ms. Watkins, would you poll the members?
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
And Mr. Tiller?
Aye. Thank you, Chief. Next on the agenda is other business. Anybody have any other business they'd like to chat while you've got a captive audience? If no other business, so yes, we do. Mr. Evelyn, now you know you want to do that.
Mr. Chairman, I move to go in closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A.3 of the Code of Virginia for discussion and consideration of acquisition of real property for public purpose, where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the county. The discussion involves a future site for the construction of the new fire station in Bonds Bridge area. And I move to go in closed session pursuant to Section 2.2-3711A.5 of the Code of Virginia for discussion concerning prospective businesses where no previous announcement has been made of the business's interest in locating its facilities in the county.
Thank you, Mr. Evelyn. Ms. Watkins, would you poll the members, please?
Mr. Evelyn?
Aye.
Ms. Page? Mr. Steers?
Aye.
Mr. Lockwood?
Aye.
And Mr. Tiller?
Aye. We shall return.
I don't think you need to stick around.
We'll be all right.
We'll be all right.
I don't want to leave and then don't need it.
No.
Give me your gun. No better than that.
Don't give it to him.
Come on down. You look like you're moving slow. What's going on there?
But it's close enough to the bridge.